Hey, this is Sonic Freak and I'm the teacher of the Raw Elites class, and in this tutorial I'm gonna give some basic tips for Sony Vegas which can hopefully help you in the process. First of all, if you open Sony Vegas for the first time, it should look something like this. If you close a window by accident, you can get it all back by going to your View tab, Windows Layout, and then click on Default Layout. I normally have my Vegas organized like this. It's also possible that you accidentally pull out a window in your Vegas, and you can get it back there by holding the control button and dragging the window to the place where you want it. While you are editing, it's possible that your preview screen is lagging. There are a few things you can do about this, like for example change the preview quality to something lower than what you normally have. I normally edit with the preview quality preview auto, but it's a good idea to switch to best fill from time to time, because some effects, like for example radial blur, look different in that preview quality. Another thing you can do is to dedicate more RAM to your preview screen, which basically means you give more power to Sony Vegas to use. You can do this at Options, Preferences, Video, and then at the Dynamic RAM Preview. It depends on your PC or laptop how much RAM you can give to Sony Vegas. I think it's normally around 100 megabytes, which isn't a lot if you are using heavy effects. So you can give it some more, but be careful though, because this only applies to your preview screen. So the other functions in Sony Vegas have less RAM to work with, but also other software you are running at the same time have less to use. If you are using heavy effects, you can give it around half of your maximum RAM capacity, and if not, something like 25% just should be enough. Now, if you use Sony Vegas to edit videos, I'm sure you must have seen this window pop up at some point, and as stressful as it is, it's even more stressful if you haven't saved your project in quite a while. But luckily Sony Vegas has an autosave feature, which you can enable or disable at your general preferences. And at the bottom you can see where they are stored, and it's also possible to change that location there. Now, one thing you may have heard quite often recently is something about resampling. Resampling is a feature which tries to smooth out the motion in a video if it uses a different frame rate. But Sony Vegas does a pretty poor job at it, which creates ghosting in your video, and that looks like this. You could say it's not a big deal, but once you know what it is, then it's very noticeable in videos which have it, and it can be very distracting at times. So that's why a lot of editors are telling each other to disable it. Now, in most editing software it is already disabled by default, but weirdly enough that's not the case with Sony Vegas. We have to do that manually. You do this by simply right-clicking on your footage, go to Switches and click on Disable Resampling. The thing is, we have only done that for one single clip right now, and you don't want to do this for every single clip which is left. So there's one trick to do this for all the clips at once, which is by pressing Ctrl and A. Now we have selected all the clips. Then we hold Ctrl while we are unselecting all the sound clips, because there is no resampling for sound files, and because of that you are not able to disable it on your footage. So unselect all the sound files, and then you can disable resampling on one of your clips, which will make it disabled for all the other remaining clips. The last tip is about rendering your video. Now, if you click on the render button, then there are a bunch of render options. As an anime editor, we are most of the time mainly interested in AVI, MP4 and WMV. AVI has the best quality out of all of them, but at the same time it takes the longest amount of time to render, and it has a huge file size. So it's my advice to only use it if you want to pre-render something, to use it later on, because then you don't lose quality in the process. Now, MP4 is the most recommended format. For Sony Vega's main concept AVC/AAC is the best one to use for it in my opinion. MP4 has slightly less quality than AVI, but the render time is faster and the file size is a lot smaller. The last one is WMV. This one has less quality than MP4, but is faster with rendering and has around the same file size. Now, if you are going to render out your video, you have to make sure that the render settings match your project settings, which you can see here. And if you want to change the render settings, you simply click on one of the templates and then on Customize Template. For MP4, this is my render settings, and if you want to use it as well, just make sure that your frame rate and frame size matches your project settings. And if your graphics card supports it, which you can check at System, you can either use CUDA or OpenCL, which will make the render process a lot shorter. Well, that's about it for this tutorial. I hope you learned something useful in this one, and while we didn't learn any new effects, these tips will help you out in the long run. If you want a certain specific tutorial next time, then tell me in the comments down below. And thanks for watching.